Okay, this is Emily Baldwin, and my topic for this presentation was if hormone replacement therapy was a risk factor for breast cancer. So the significance of breast cancer is that it's the most common form of cancer in women. And the American Cancer Society estimates that about 250,000 new cases of breast cancer was diagnosed in 2017, and that approximately 40,000 women die from breast cancer every year, and then that it is the most common form of cancer found in white and African American women. The significance of exposure would be the hormone replacement therapy, which is most commonly used after a woman experiences menopause. Hormone replacement therapy can be administered either systemically or locally. Systemically is the most common. It's either continuously given or they do it in like cycles. The most common hormones replaced is either just an estrogen alone or a combination of estrogen and progestin. The benefits of hormone replacement therapy include relief of hot flashes and night sweats, vaginal dryness, bone loss, and it can reduce the risk of colon cancer. Hormone replacement therapy can also increase the risk of uterine cancer, heart attack, deep vein thrombosis, and the website I found this information on said breast cancer. So the first article I looked at was called Oral Contraceptives, Hormone Replacement Therapy and Breast Cancer Risk, a cohort study of 16,928 women, 48 years and older. This study looked at effects of oral contraceptives and hormone replacement therapy on breast cancer risk, and they used a population-based cohort to determine if the use of oral contraceptives before beginning hormone replacement therapy or before menopause affected the breast cancer risk. And they took into the account the different types of hormone replacement therapy, the length of time they were on, they did the therapy, and they found the population from those who visited the Icelandic Cancer Detection Clinic between 1979 and 2006. To conduct the study, they had the women provide information on the use of oral contraceptives and hormone replacement therapy after the age of 48 years, and then linked that to the Icelandic Cancer Registry. So, strengths of this population was that, study was that it's population-based study design. They were able to collect the data over a 30-year period and were able to distinguish between what hormone replacement therapy regimens were used by the women. Limitations to this study was that out of those 16,000 women, they were able to use them all, but they were limited to the women that had visited the Icelandic Cancer Detection Clinic as opposed to just the general population. Their menopausal status was unknown, which is a big limitation considering most hormone replacement therapy is begun after menopause, not necessarily oral contraceptives, but that's big for menopause. There is a time lag between the age of when the information was given and when participants exited the study. Overall, though, they had a good amount of information to share. I'll talk about the results when I get to my Heineken's criteria. My second article was serum estrogen and SHBG levels and breast cancer incidence among users and never users of hormone replacement therapy. So the researchers for this article knew that estrogen and SHBG are associated with the risk of breast cancer among women who never used hormone replacement therapy, and they wanted to investigate the levels of estrogen and SHBG between those that never used hormone replacement therapy and those women that did. So they conducted a case control study within the Danish population-based diet, cancer, and health cohort. They identified 20,861 postmenopausal women, but were only able to use 348 cases from that. All of the participants provided 30 mils of non-fasting blood samples, and the food frequency questionnaire doesn't have much to do with this topic, but they filled out a lifestyle questionnaire that answered questions about hormone therapy use and other things like health status and length of schooling, the age at which they started their period and at which they went through menopause, how many children they'd used or had, and the use of exogenous hormones. Strengths of this study was that it was a prospective design. They had complete registries for follow-up. They were able to use a biological measure of exposure and had detailed information on their potential confounders. Limitations was that there was a relatively short follow-up, and what they mean by that is that basically the follow-up stopped when a woman had a diagnosis of cancer. They only had a single exposure measurement, so it may reflect the true long-term exposure, and the availability of more cases would have given the study a better statistical power. Third article was mammographic breast density and breast cancer risk by menopausal status, postmenopausal hormone use, and a family history of breast cancer. This study wanted to look at the association between breast density and breast cancer. They also looked at or associated that with a family history, the participants' menopausal status, and postmenopausal hormone use. They wanted to find out if there was an association of breast density and breast cancer, and if it differed according to each of those risk factors. This study included 1,481 incident breast cancer cases, and they were diagnosed within the Nurses' Health Study 1 and 2 cohorts, and then they were able to find 2,779 controls. And then they measured breast density from digitized images with computerized techniques. Information instruments was based on risk factors from a biennial questionnaire that was conducted before the date of the cancer diagnosis for cancer cases, and then matched those to the controls. Strengths were that the results are similar to previous studies, and they were able to have controls. I think that was the only article I had controls within their study. And then limitations, I felt like there was too many factors taken into consideration. They can't really measure genetic factors with the family history and other problems in that realm. So this slide shows my Heineken's criteria for each of the 3 studies. Study number 1, they all showed that the results were statistically significant. The first study, the 95% confidence interval was 1.94 to 3.34, and the p-value was 0.043. And since that didn't have a 1 in the confidence interval, there is an association. And I said, based on the strength of association with a hazard ratio of 2.55, that there was a moderate strength of association. A couple biases that I believe each of the studies faced was selection bias and recall bias. Each study, I feel, really limited their potential participants by just taking them from very certain registries or just looking at very certain specific populations for this study. And then I think there's always a chance for recall bias, especially when the studies are looking at or having participants fill out questionnaires to answer the questions about their hormone use previously and currently, and some women might not know to not include something, or they could have forgotten about something they had used in the past. My confounding was for the first study, age was controlled, gender was controlled in all 3 studies. They didn't control for race, which probably isn't that big of a deal for this type of study, and they didn't look at like number of births or age of menarche or menopause. And then my biologic plausibility, the first one met. There is other evidence supporting that the use of hormone replacement therapy has a association with the development of breast cancer. All 3 had consistency, temporality, and dose response. They all have studies that agree. The 3 studies that I looked at agree with each other, and they're all consistent with what they were finding. Study 2, my confidence interval was 2.88 to 4.87. The p-value was less than 0.0001. Odds ratio was 3.47, so it had a strong association. And my third study confidence interval was 1.22 to 3.86, and the p-value was 0.05. And my rate ratio was 2.17, so it was also a moderate strength of association. And then you can look at this chart and see the confounding information, and that the rest agree with that. My conclusions are that there is higher levels of estrogen do lead to the development of breast cancer. There's at least a small association with that. The use of hormone replacement therapy after menopause has a higher association of breast cancer development than the use of it prior to menopause. Hormone replacement therapy was shown to increase breast cancer development in all 3 studies, and it can also cause breast density to increase, which is associated with the development of breast cancer. And I would say further research is needed on more specific hormone replacement therapy. While each were able to tell what hormone replacement the participants were using, they did not have their effect on breast cancer, or they didn't say like how they used it. So looking at cyclical or systemic or local and all that stuff would help. And that is it. They are references. Thank you.